Very recently, the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office closed a cold case homicide involving a young girl that had been open for 43 years. According to authorities, Lucia Jackson, then 12 years old, vanished from her neighborhood off FM 1485 on September 7, 1979. Families of victims and cold case investigators often ask, will you forgive the person who brutally tore apart a family? And how would you handle waking up each day not knowing who's responsible? Even more puzzling is how the killer received justice before another case was solved. For over 43 years, the family of Lucia Michele Jackson was in the dark until new evidence revealed a cold case that had been one of Montgomery County's oldest unsolved crimes. The explanations for the tragic death of a lovely person had now been revealed. Autumn 1979 in Conroe, Texas, named after Union Cavalry officer and lumberjack Isaac Conroe, is located 40 miles north of Houston and offers the ideal balance of beautiful nights under the stars and busy city lights. Everyone can find something to enjoy, whether they enjoy leisurely shopping, live entertainment, or a cold beer to beat the heat in the south. The town has experienced a number of diseases and 2 fires that almost completely destroyed the newly established town. Yet despite these setbacks, its residents' strength is evident in the town's steadily rising appeal as a family-friendly community. Conroe attracts adventurers with its proximity to Mexico. Lake Conroe, a 22,000-acre lake, popular with outdoor and water sports enthusiasts, is its main attraction. Visitors enjoy water sports like boating, fishing, and swimming in the lake. Washington junior level student Lucia was quiet and liked swimming with friends and family. Lucia, her brothers, relatives, and friends visited Wildwood Lake on September 7, 1979. Conroe's Lake Wildwood has Wildwood Lake. Because frequent lake and pool users were present, it was safe. Her parents characterized Lucia as well-behaved, a good student, and happy. She had blonde hair and huge horn-rimmed glasses. Lucia's mother and stepfather, Charles Hirsch, searched the pier and pool area, but she was gone. After discovering something had happened, they drove through the subdivision streets and visited Lucia's relatives and friends' homes. Charles and Laura called the police when they couldn't find Lucia and they feared the worst. Bobby said they noticed a man driving erratically on the subdivision road as they returned from the lake. The motorist was in a brown Monte Carlo he had seen before. The friend jumped out of the car's path to avoid getting hit. Robinson worried that Lucia had been kidnapped after a cursory search. 6 days later, on September 13th, an Exxon worker named James Wiley Dawson made a horrifying discovery while on the job. He had been sent to fix a pipeline issue along Exxon Road, which is about half a mile from the lake. When he smelled decomposition in the area, he thought it might have been a dead animal. However, when he went looking for the animal, he found the severely decomposed and brutalized body of a girl. People who knew him claimed he had an intimate knowledge of the crime and frequently asked friends to introduce him to younger girls. When he was eventually found and arrested on suspicion, he was subjected to a lengthy interrogation before breaking and pointing the finger at another accomplice who assisted in the murder. Police tracked down and arrested a second man. One in particular stood out as a man who had served in the Vietnam War and was a heroin addict. People who knew him claimed he knew intimate details of the crime, and after both men were the subject of an investigation, physical evidence and a written confession provided by the Vietnam veteran during the investigation convinced the investigators that they had finally solved and cracked the case. However, when the suspect spoke out, the Vietnam veteran claimed that the police had coerced him into signing a written confession and further made claims of police misconduct. In 2006, Tommy DeRoy, a former classmate of Lucia's, joined the police force and advanced to the rank of detective. He was later appointed to the cold case squad by Montgomery County Sheriff Tommy Gage as a cold case investigator. DeRoy said that he did not know Lucia Jackson at school and he had not followed the case closely, but he understood the family's need for closure after years of grief. Although there had been improvements in testing since the murder of Lucia, DeRoy started sending the samples found on Lucia's clothing for DNA testing. However, the sample could not be matched to criminals already listed on the FBI's Combined DNA Index System, or CODIS, because they were just not strong enough. Time was of the essence, as suspects and witnesses might be too old to remember crucial evidence or pass away before the case could be solved in 2018. Even though Lucia's family did not want to bring up the horrific memories of the incident again, one of her brothers did make a statement revealing that the family of the wounded had forgiven the killer and was working to recover from the trauma. Courtney Fisher's report on the case's current developments not only rekindled interest in the cold case, but it also shed light on the wounded family's forgiveness of the killer and their ongoing efforts to recover from the trauma. The report recommended that investigators attempt innovative techniques for collecting and extracting DNA. The controversy was reignited in 2022 by a new technology known as MVAC, which employs what experts in the area refer to as the moist vacuum sampling technique. This involves directly spraying nucleus and DNA-free buffers onto the surfaces being investigated, followed by the application of vacuum pressure to obtain the best DNA sample that can be used for research. In October 2021, the Montgomery County Cold Case Homicide Squad used this technology to extract the DNA that had been left on Lucia's shirt since 1979 and was able to identify her killer. The FBI conducted a study in 2020 and found that better samples of DNA were collected compared to traditional swabbing, particularly if the surface was porous. 43 years later, Gerald Dwight Casey had already been executed by lethal injection in Texas on April 12, 2002 for a different capital murder case. Casey was the 770th murderer to get the death penalty in the United States since 1976. When compared to the DNA recovered from Lucia's clothes and a blood sample taken from Casey prior to his execution, the DNA sample entered into the CODA system was 100% matched to Casey in the attack and murder of Lucia Jackson. Casey was 47 years old when he was executed in 1991 after being found guilty of killing Lucia in Conroe in 1989. This was all done to collect money for a vacation that he and his companions later went on. Prior to the 1989 murder, Carla Smith had planned to move from Texas to Florida. Casey, who was 34 at the time, was a habitual felon with numerous prior convictions for burglary, possession of marijuana, heroin theft, and assault on a police officer. He was, one might say, a bad seed from the start. Casey and his accomplice killed Carla. Smith went to Darrell Pennington to sell him furniture and a TV, derailing Casey and Smith's plans to move to Florida. Unfortunately, Pennington declined, so they planned to steal and sell his gun collection to raise money. Smith testified against Casey at his trial that she called Hal on July 10, 1989, to make sure Pennington had left for work and Hal was home alone. She and Casey were intending to overpower, bind, and gag Hal before snatching the guns in the morning. But Smith left Casey at the trailer and tortured her. After an argument he tried to break up, Casey accused Smith of killing Hal. The victim's body had Casey's hair, and a wash rack and a shirt recovered in Williams' goalie, where they had hidden the stolen firearms, matched the victim. Howell was beaten and shot 9 times. Smith was paroled in 1999 after serving 10 years. He hasn't been convicted since then. Before his 2002 execution, Casey said nothing regretful. Casey managed to avoid his first murder trial, but he was caught killing another woman. Casey's depravity is unfathomable. Lethal injection killed Casey at 6:18 p.m. Fried chicken and Dr. Pepper were his last supper. Since Lucia Jackson died in 1979, little is known about her family, yet they may have forgiven her killer. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office called it their oldest cold case. Detectives' persistence solved a spooky mystery. Casey buried his secret with Lucia Jackson for his family. Casey's deserved punishment left bittersweet memories. It's rare for a cold case to end this way, which raises a question of whether Gerald Dwight Casey's demise was prompted by anything more potent than Lucia's message about never taking our or others' safety for granted. Could Lucia Jackson's soul not stand by and watch another girl be lost in the vault of unsolved cases? Or could it be that the investigators' efforts and future technological advancements might help to solve some of the most notorious unsolved cold cases in the world? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications before leaving. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.